喂，試聲123，123，123，試聲123，423，423，4，123，4，123，4，得唔得？阿圖得唔得 ？OK 啊？
各位傳媒朋友。
Friends of the media, thank you for coming to the press conference. The Chief Executive will say a few words and then we'll take questions from the floor. First, the Chief Executive. Friends of the media, members of the public. Earlier on, I quoted the statement of the World Health Organization. It says that as there's further development of the epidemic, the prevention strategy and measures to stop the epidemic may have to be adjusted accordingly. The work that the ASEAN government has done is in line with this view. That's why on the 28th, the 25th, the 28th, and the 31st of January, I have announced various measures to fight the disease. That's because we've been monitoring the developments of the epidemic, and then we've considered other factors, and we decided to make adjustments. The aim is to stop the spread of the disease. Just now, the Center for Health Protection of the Department of Health gave you an update. As of today, there are still 15 cases of confirmed cases. Today, I and my colleagues are going to announce further measures to prevent the spread of the disease. Now, in this strategy, in this fight, the experts have told us we need to resort to containment. One measure is to stop, to reduce people movements across the border, because the epicenter of the epidemic is in Wuhan and Hubei province. So that's why we try our very best to reduce the people movements across the border. And this two-pronged approach. First is we target the source. That is for people who have visas to come to Hong Kong for work or for leisure. So by tackling the issue at source, that means we will stop the issuing of such permits. So with the support of the central authorities and the Guangdong government, the relevant authorities have stopped issuing visas to Hong Kong, endorsements to Hong Kong. That includes endorsements for tour groups.
簽署。另外，廣東省呢亦都係已經停發所有嘅公務嘅簽注，呢個係從源頭做起。第二方面呢，係大幅度咁要去減低跨境嘅人數。喺1月30號，特區政府呢係整合咗我哋嘅口岸管制區，暫停咗6個口岸嘅跨境服務。呢個效果係顯著嘅。我跟住同大家講述嘅係一啲措施實施前，即係以1月29日嗰一日為基礎啦，同埋措施實施後以昨天最新嘅數字作為比較。呢兩組嘅數字比較將係如下：所有嘅口岸入境不包括機場。喺措施生效之前呢，整體嘅入境人數係17,991嚇，而實施咗管制整合措施之後呢，係73,019，下降嘅幅度係57%。再睇下入境人士嘅不同嘅類別，屬於係香港居民嘅下降嘅幅度，亦都係好巧合啦，亦都係57%。屬於內地居民係62%，其他嘅旅客呢係49%。特別可能有啲人士係關心內地嘅居民赴港嚇，咁實際嘅人數喺琴日呢係7,066人次。點解集中講入境呢？因為對於疫情嘅控制，衛生署長多次都強調啦，我哋最緊張呢係入境，因為呢就驚有病毒呢係隨住喺一個有疫情嘅地區呢係傳播咗嚟香港嚇。咁所以係剛才講嗰一套數字呢係入境嘅數字，但係喺香港嘅特殊情況呢，對於香港居民出境，我哋同樣關心，因為佢經過呢啲口岸，絕大部分而家係陸路嘅口岸，同埋有渡輪嘅口岸啦，都係去內地嘅。咁相信唔少呢離咗境之後係會入境嘅嚇，無論係即日往返啦， 或者係喺內地逗留一段短嘅時間係會翻嚟。咁所以同期間喺措施生效前同埋生效後嘅香港居民出境數字一樣係唔包括香港國際機場咧。喺措施生效之前係42,766，措施生效之後即係昨天呢，仍然係有超過3萬人，係31,771人次，下跌嘅幅度咧只係26%。所以我哋喺檢視咗呢啲數字，因為其實都係30號生效啦。喺過去呢4日咧，我哋認為從公共衛生同埋防控疫情嘅角度，每日仍然有7萬多人入境人次嚇，每日仲有7萬多人次入境，所有類別，同埋每日仲有3萬多香港居民嘅人次出境。剛才講咗啦，呢啲出境嘅人士咧稍後會入境嘅，係仍然會帶嚟令人可能會有啲擔心嘅傳播病毒嘅風險。亦都係考慮咗呢個因素咧，我哋係今日就公布進一步需要嚴控關口、壓縮人流嘅措施。簡單嚟講咧，今日嘅措施咧都係沿用喺幾日前公布嘅。我哋係要整合啲口岸嘅管制區，咁所以今日我宣布咧，就係所有陸路同埋海路嘅跨境人流將會只係集中喺2個口岸，亦即係話深圳灣口岸同埋港珠澳大橋嘅香港口岸。換句話說，我哋將暫時停止其他4個口岸嘅運作，包括羅湖係鐵路啦，落馬洲支線都係有條鐵路去嘅，落馬洲皇崗同埋港澳碼頭，明日0時0分生效。換句話說，仲要用呢4個口岸嘅人士呢，係今晚午夜就要使用啦。做咗呢個嘅整合工作之後呢，香港連接內地同埋外地嘅口岸只係剩返3個，一個係香港國際機場，一個係深圳灣口岸，一個係港珠澳大橋嘅香港口岸。呢個嘅幅度呢係非常之大嘅。隨住香港同埋內地嘅公共交通嘅運力，亦都會作出調整。呢個調整當然係向下㗎啦，應該。例如香港同內地嘅航班呢，會進一步縮減，亦都會令到我剛才講口岸整合之後，亦都因為冇咗公共交通，咁所以人流呢亦都會持續咁下降。特區政府會繼續密切監察個情況，呢個情況包括疫情嘅發展啦，亦都包括出入境嘅人數。有需要嘅時候呢，係會毫不猶豫咁咧採取進一步嘅措施。我今日都可以預告，進一步嘅措施呢，或許係需要包括強制要求所有符合健康評估嘅入境人士接受檢疫。呢個目前嚟講呢，我哋只係適用於係嚟自湖北省嘅香港居民，同埋仍然留咗喺香港嘅湖北嘅居民。但係如果要做進一步嘅嚴控嘅措施呢，我哋係或許係需要做過呢個步驟啦。因此呢，我喺今日亦都要清楚説明，喺呢一次嘅防疫工作裏邊呢，足夠嘅檢疫中心設施，包括家居檢疫嘅各項嘅安排，亦都包括醫管局需要啟動一啲指定嘅診所呢，係我哋今次防疫工作嘅必要條件。我喺呢度呼籲，我係好認真咁呼籲各區嘅區議員同埋居民唔好再反對。政府仍然喺度努力尋找設施，但係每一次我哋揾到或者公佈，或者甚至未正式公佈，已經受到強烈嘅反對，甚至惡意嘅破壞，將大大影響今次防控疫情嘅工作。剛才我講咗啦，我哋今次嘅控關嘅力度係大嘅。香港嘅口岸區一共係13個，我哋已經經過2步走呢，係暫停咗10個口岸區嘅服務。上次做完嘅措施嘅效果，剛才同大家分享嘅數字啦，係顯著嘅，亦都能夠達至減少人流。 做埋呢樣今日公佈，而且係差唔多幾個鐘頭後生效呢，我哋相信係能夠達至大幅減少人流呢個目的。但係正如我剛才講啦，喺我哋密切嘅監察之後，而且呢個係做得好快嘅，大家都見到嚇，我哋會毫不猶豫咁再做進一步嘅措施。同心抗疫係我哋今次重點，要希望喺社會上得到大家嘅認同。事實上，公共衛生嘅防護工作喺每一個地方都需要社會嘅支持，需要市民嘅配合。喺呢度，我作幾個呼籲。第一，我係強烈勸喻香港嘅居民，如非必要，唔好去到疫情嘅地方，包括當然內地。我亦都喺度呼籲大家係要遵從衛生防護中心發出嘅指示，要充分合作。無論衛生防護中心發出嘅指示係一般性俾普通市民嘅指示，或者針對一啲經過健康評估要作出一啲特別嘅遵從嘅指示，我都呼籲所有嘅市民呢係要充分合作。第三個呼籲呢，就係懷疑感染嘅個案，或者已經確診咗感染嘅人士，請你如實向衛生防護中心交代你喺外遊嘅情況，同埋你曾經緊密接觸嘅人士，方便當局進行呢個追蹤。呢個係對於公共衛生嘅防護呢，又係一個好重要嘅一環嚟嘅。事實上，如果有人係唔做呢個如實呢，係犯法嘅嚇。我哋亦都會嚴正咧嚟到執法。第四個呼籲，希望一般嘅市民呢，盡量留喺屋企裏邊嚇，就唔可以最好咧就唔好去人多嘅地方。當然呢個要係條件許可，同埋即係佢冇一個必要要出要離家啦。如果要必要都係冇辦法，就要做好呢個個人嘅防護工作啦。跟住咧係呼籲企業喺今次咁嚴峻嘅疫情呢，好多嘅公共衛生嘅措施都可能影響到僱員上班嘅，所以喺呢度呢，我都係好誠心咁呼籲香港嘅企業，呢個係共度時艱嘅時候啦。希望佢哋以保障公共衛生考慮，體恤咁處理僱員喺呢段期間佢嘅返工嘅受到影響。最後呢，我喺呢度再次向緊守崗位嘅醫護人員致敬，佢哋將市民嘅健康擺喺第一位，所以同樣地，我喺呢度承諾，特區政府亦都會將佢哋喺呢一次防疫工作所需要嘅資源放喺第一位。我哋會盡最大嘅努力，確保香港嘅醫護人員嘅防護裝備同埋物資供應，包括口罩啦，就係會得到最大嘅保障嚇。咁喺呢方面嘅工作，我哋會同醫院管理局緊密聯繫，有需要咧喺各個方面，特區政府都會作出適切嘅安排。多謝大家。
而家係提問時間，請大家希望提問嘅先舉手，嗌到你之後咧，請你係用介紹你傳媒機構，然之後咧用咪發問嘅。紅色衫嗰位記者。
你好，係文匯報記者提問，想問今次減少口岸同醫護人員罷工係有冇關係呢？同埋想問而家嘅醫護人員罷工係咪置市民嘅生命安全於不顧？你自己會唔會呼籲醫護人員唔好罷工呢？同埋都想問而家已經罷工嘅醫護人員會唔會受到處分？唔該。
第一條題目呢，就我哋今日公布嘅進一步控制關口、縮減人流嘅措施呢，係同我哋早前做呢係一脈相承，係個力度嘅問題嘅啫嚇，同埋亦都考慮到嗰個疫情嘅發展啦。咁所以係完全同醫管局嘅部分員工喺今日開始進行呢個佢哋嘅5日嘅罷工呢，係完全冇關係。任何人如果認為用呢啲極端嘅手段，可以威逼到特區政府或者係醫管局去做一啲我哋理性上唔應該做嘅嘢嚇，或者對公眾利益係有害無益嘅嘢，都唔會得逞啊。至於第二、第三個問題咧，我先請醫院管理局高醫生講講，然後我可以講講我自己作為行政長官對於部分醫護人員 喺呢件事上邊嘅態度嘅睇法。高醫生。
係我哋較早前得悉有啲同事特別工會同事啦就住提出一啲防疫嘅一啲理念嘅意見咧佢希望藉着罷工嘅方法去表達咧，我哋係表示不同意嘅，因為我哋都相信咧，大家對防疫嘅理念咧大致上都係理解同埋一致，但係呢個表達方式嘅方法咧係會影響到我哋照顧病人嘅情況啦同埋對整體服務都有影響。至於嗰啲同事，如果佢係藉着罷工或者其他方面啦，譬如話請病假或者缺勤啊，或者我哋叫做 absence from duty 咧，醫管局咧一路咧都係有既定嘅人力資源守則指引咁對每一個個案嘅情況可能都唔會一樣啦咁我哋都會根據我哋現有嘅指引咧去作適當嘅跟進。
我或者呢度講多兩句就我完全明白醫護人員咧喺今次嘅防疫工作裏邊係企喺最前線係承受好大嘅壓力，所以我頭先都講啦對於醫護人員我係表示衷心嘅感謝，亦都好敬佩佢哋嘅我亦都會喺我哋嘅能力範圍裏邊，將我哋揾得到嘅醫護防護防疫嘅供應咧係優先俾佢哋用。呢個唔係淨係我本人講，我哋今日係出咗指引俾自己嘅政府部門，我哋整個香港特區政府必須要認清楚，我哋優先要照顧到醫護人員佢哋嗰個防護嘅需要。第二樣嘢，醫護人員嘅壓力點樣可以減少？我哋其實目標係一致嘅，我哋都認為應該係壓縮跨境嘅人流，令到呢個病毒嘅傳播可以係被切斷而事實上，我哋一直都係做緊，一直都係隨呢個方向做緊咁每一次我哋睇到需要加大力度，我哋加大力度但係未必係用到某一啲人提倡嘅手法。就正如我所講啦，我哋都要睇香港整體嗰個利益，同埋其他市民佢哋係有一個必須嘅需要咧，我哋都要考慮。第三，既然係目標一致，就應該齊心協力去共同抗疫。喺呢個咁關鍵嘅時候，採取一個極端嘅手法，而呢個極端手法咧，無可避免係會影響到對於病人嗰個嘅權益，無可避免令到已經疲於奔命嘅醫管局嘅管理階層咧係百上加斤。我覺得我冇辦法可以認同呢一種嘅手法。我亦都喺呢兩日咧收到好多資深甚至係其他前線嘅醫護人員咧，都係表示唔認同呢個手法，但佢都有反映俾我聽。個行政長官，你都要諗諗加大力度。我哋係聽到嘅，我啲專家包括袁國勇教授，包括梁卓偉教授，都係認為，既然一直都行呢個方向，呢個方向要按住疫情嘅發展咧嚟到去加大力度。我哋真係做緊呢樣嘢咁所以喺咁嘅情況之下，如果採取一個其實有一定嘅即係政治意味嘅手段啦，我覺得係對香港整體嘅防疫工作啦，對於香港市民嘅公共衛生嘅保障咧，係非常之不利。
下一條淺藍色衫，第二係
RFA 記者姓李嘅。咁我哋想問下咧，其實點解其實今次醫護罷工咧都係一直都係爭取嘅訴求係全面封關嘅。咁啊點解要剩低嗰兩個口岸啦？咁啊而呢兩個口岸嘅人即係預計嗰個入境人次會係幾多啦？因為其實啱啱特首你都講到啦，其實每日都有7萬嘅人次出入境。咁啊其實亦都有講法話，如果唔係全面封關嘅話，會造成嗰兩個口岸嘅人口壓力。咁其實點解特首到今日都話係唔係全面封關呢？另外點解又都係今日突然間轉態呢？因為之前咧特首亦都不定話咧，即係如果係封關嘅話係會造成歧視嘅。咁啊另一個問題啦就係特首你講到啦會係嚴正執法啦。咁但係你會係點樣做呢？即係就住譬如之前有人瞞報啦，甚至係逃走嘅一啲個案，去咗3間醫院嘅人，你會唔會有檢控呢？有冇跟進呢？咁啊，另外一個口罩供應問題啦，到今時今日咧，亦都唔少嘅傳媒報道啦，有多嘅一啲嘅 CSI 嘅口罩咧係流落喺市面，亦都有人咧係唔知點解咧獲得咗呢啲嘅口罩，亦都有醫護人員話咧呢啲嘅口罩供應咧係唔足夠嘅。咁啊， 特首你點樣去確保每一位醫護人員有足夠嘅口罩，每一個市民都有足夠嘅口罩呢？唔該。
第一個問題呢，就我哋做緊嘅嘢呢，都係同我哋一向講嘅防疫抗疫嘅策略呢係吻合嘅，所以並不存在你剛才講嘅轉態。呢個係一個力度嘅問題嚇。咁所以由1月30號，我哋整合咗口岸，先呢係暫停咗6個口岸。今日我哋再暫停4個口岸，呢個力度係相當之大。我相信呢亦都係可以達至減少人流。不過我喺呢度我冇辦法可以即係預計會減少幾多，因為如果佢真係有必要係要過關嘅呢，你冇咗口岸 A， 佢可以去口岸 B 㗎嘛。但係而家剩翻嘅口岸 B 同埋 C 呢，就係一個係深圳灣口岸，一個呢就係港珠澳大橋嘅香港口岸，兩個比較方便亦都人多嘅口岸，因為佢有鐵路通關呢，我哋都停咗。一個係羅湖，一個係落馬洲支線。咁所以按住喺30號喺29號啦，即係措施生效之前嘅數字，同埋昨天嘅數字呢，其實佢都係持續下降嘅。所以我淨係俾咗2日嘅比較，但如果你可以手度揸住30號、31號、1號、2號呢，佢都係持續下降嘅。尤其是喺第一日，即係30號相對於29號呢，係相當立竿見影咁呢，會睇得到刪咗當時6個口岸啦，啲旅客唔係擠晒去第度，佢就唔去啦嚇。咁所以今次我哋選擇淨係留翻深圳灣口岸同港珠澳大橋口岸呢，亦都係呢2個口岸係未必係咁方便原本用緊鐵路口岸嘅人。港珠澳大橋嘅口岸，香港口岸區當然仲有一個特別嘅需要啦，就因為我哋閂埋港澳碼頭，咁所以港澳嘅聯繫呢，就係靠呢條陸路嘅港珠澳大橋嘅口岸。咁所以呢個工作係同我哋早前講嘅取態咧係一致嘅嚇。至於喺檢控嘅工作裏邊呢，我哋有權有需要嘅時候就要用啦嚇。咁所以我剛才咧就係先作一個呼籲或者一個提醒嚇。如果有人認為可以隱瞞或者係特登講咗啲唔係真實嘅嘢，影響咗我哋喺衛生防護中心去追蹤呢啲緊密接觸者，或者甚至就住呢個個案，我哋應該即係專業係點樣去評估佢呢？咁呢個我哋係有需要嘅時候，一定係會動用我哋有嘅權力㗎。第3個關於口罩，幾日前呢，就我哋都透過政務司司長特別做咗一個係集中係講香港口罩供應嗰個嘅問題。好坦白講，而家全球都喺度爭緊呢啲防疫嘅裝備同埋物資，甚至有啲地方呢，對於佢當地係出口都有限制，即係話佢有生產地喺度，但佢出口都限制。我哋而家喺全球採購嘅過程裏邊呢，亦都往往要去處理埋呢個人哋限制出口，即係你落咗 order 買咗俾埋錢，都未必可以出到嗰個嘅問題嚇。咁所以我哋會喺呢度繼續努力，但我必須喺呢度好坦白承認呢，就呢個短缺係存在，亦都唔係短時間可以處理，因為就係睇下個疫情嘅發展啦。如果大家都係即係好擔心，大家都係要戴口罩，咁當然令到嗰個全球嗰個短缺嘅情況咧會更加嚴峻，咁所以令到香港要採購就更加困難啊。而我哋嘅本地嘅生產咧就好可惜，因為以前喺香港做工業咧都唔係一個普遍啦嘅做法啦，咁所以只係得我哋自己嘅懲教署一個生產線，同埋一個喺科學園裏邊比較高科技嘅生產，兩個已經係應我哋嘅要求好努力咧喺度增產啊！甚至懲教署咧，我哋輸入到呢啲機器咧，我哋想多開生產線咧，嚟有增加呢個供應。但呢兩個供應都唔係算大嘅。如果以今日我掌握一日喺醫院管理局要係消耗幾多嘅口罩咧，呢兩個本地嘅生產線係遠遠唔可以做到你剛才希望我可以確保。即係所有嘅醫護人員都係持續當然今日係應該有供應嘅，但係你話要喺未來一段日子每日有足夠嘅供應呢，我今日係難以作呢個保證。所以我剛才説法呢，我哋會盡最大嘅努力，亦都會將佢哋嘅要求、佢哋嘅訴求係擺喺第一位。 呢個亦都係原因呢，就我哋真係冇辦法喺我哋嘅庫存嗰度嘅量已經唔多呢，係拎出嚟去即係派發俾市民。我當然好關心市民，但係當我哋面對嘅疫情嘅時候呢，我哋必須要確保醫護人員喺前線去抗疫，同埋去幫助市民去治療市民嘅時候呢，佢都要有足夠呢個嘅供應。至於關於我哋懲教署 CSI 生產嘅口罩係咪有不合常規咁流入咗市場呢？我相信懲教署咧會繼續去調查。
Let's take a couple of English questions. Gentleman here, please.
Thank you. John Ray from ITV News of the United Kingdom. Forgive me, Mrs. Lam, asking you in English. If you could reply in English for my audience, it would be great. Can I ask you this? Why haven't you closed all the border crossings? You know, an open border is an open border, and the longer it remains open, the greater the danger to the people of Hong Kong. Isn't that the truth of this?
Well, in answering your question, John, you have to understand that the situation between Hong Kong and the mainland of China is almost unique. Over the years, we have established very close relationship. I don't mean the government-to-government relationship, but it's a relationship between the two people, the two economies, the two communities. So there is a huge demand, I suppose, a huge legitimate demand for that sort of cross-border travel. And that's why I'm quoting you figures that there were indeed more Hong Kong people crossing the border almost on a daily basis, and then they have to come back. So the purposes, as I could understand, will include work. I'm sure you have come across people who work in Hong Kong, live in Shenzhen, or who live in Hong Kong and work in Shenzhen because of the technology industries and so on. And there's also a demand for looking after young family. I'm sure you have also heard about we have a large number of children who have the right of abode in Hong Kong, but their mothers do not have that right yet. So they may have to cross the border on a frequent basis to look after their children. And then we have the supply of food and other necessities. Although, of course, we are keeping the cargo clearance open, but there's a lot of logistics involved that require people to cross the border. I can continue to give you examples of this very legitimate and genuine cross-border traffic that we need to handle. Otherwise, we will end up with more troubles for the operation of the city and also for the 7 million population of Hong Kong. So our strategy is really to consolidate as much as possible the existing control points. Now it's really down to, excluding the airport, there are only two. One is the Shenzhen Bay, the other is the Hong Kong-Macau-Zhuhai Bridge. And the additional benefit of doing that is we are channeling all cross-border traffic into these two cross-border control points. And because of the inconvenience that we have caused to people as a result, so the numbers will come down. And I have proven that the numbers have come down. The second merit is we can then concentrate the people, I mean the staff. We can release a rough estimate of about 1,000 civil servants from the other control points to be suspended operation into these two remaining open control points. So they can do much better medical surveillance, inquiries, temperature check, and so on, in order to fulfill that same purpose of infection control. So this is really a sort of balance that one has to strike, given Hong Kong's very unique situation. But as I said, this is not the end of our strategy or our efforts. We will continue to monitor the situation and take whatever necessary steps to protect Hong Kong from this infection.
One more English, please.
Hi, Locke from SCMP. Mrs. Lam, you just said that some of the demands made by the medics that are currently on strikes are irrational. Actually, they have two demands for you. One is to maintain a steady supply of masks to Hong Kong, and the second being that to impose a ban for travelers coming into Hong Kong from mainland, regardless of origin. Can you make clear on which part of that is irrational? Second question being that you said that excluding the airport, you will be channeling traffic, cross-border traffic between Hong Kong and mainland into two ports, but actually seeing from statistics from the immigration department, actually the airport accounted for over 5,000, over 4,000 travelers from mainland in the past 2 days. Will that remain a loophole in your measures against the new virus? Will more port health measures be put at the ports that remain open to make sure that people coming in are healthy and fit? Third question being, on mask supply, you said that the government cannot release the masks made by inmates to the public, but we have seen reports that it had somehow made it onto the market. Can you explain how these masks produced that are for internal consumption has made their way into the market? Thank you.
Well, I answer the third question first. As I have mentioned, as far as I could gather, the masks produced by the Correctional Services Department under this arrangement of CSI should be for government use. Whether government use also includes some public sector use, I have yet to find out. But they should not be sold in the market because they have very stringent requirements. The SVS could also supplement. So I couldn't explain why they have gone into the market because this is an anomaly. So we have to find out and to investigate if need be. So that is my simple answer. The second question about airport. Airport, of course, is a very important control point. And airport services not only travelers from mainland, but from all over the world. And it is very important for Hong Kong to keep the Hong Kong International Airport open for both passengers and cargo. For the category of mainland visitors coming in and out at the airport, one has to differentiate between those coming from abroad. So they are not coming from an infected area per se. They are coming from abroad into Hong Kong. So this group should be of no difference to other international travelers coming into the Hong Kong International Airport. But we still have obligations to ensure the safety that you have mentioned. So at the airport, it is really a very important control point that we have introduced the more stringent measures at the very beginning, including the latest arrangement based on the WHO advice to do exit screening. Because normally the health authority is less concerned about exit, but more concerned about entry. But on this occasion, because of our airport and the international connectivity, so we have been doing exit screening for passengers leaving Hong Kong at the Hong Kong International Airport. But if there are mainlanders coming by plane to the Hong Kong International Airport, without even a very explicit policy, I'm sure the numbers will come down because the frequency of the flights is coming down significantly. Last time when I shared with you what we were doing, I said that the Secretary for Transport and Housing has been liaising with the airlines and the authorities, and the then target is perhaps to half the flights per week between Hong Kong and mainland. I'm sure Frank would say the latest development, because of different things happening, that this frequency may be further reduced. I answer the first question and then invite Secretary for Transport and Housing to say something about aviation. Now, as far as the union in the hospital authority starting their 5-day strike today, of course, they have several demands. That's why I said if you look through the objectives of what they want to do, we are not so different. The objective is to protect Hong Kong and to lessen as much as possible the workload at the hospital authority and the chances of being infected. So if you ask me to comment individually on their demands, I have no problem with their request that we should try to ensure a stable supply. We have been doing it for quite some time, but I'm explaining to you the difficulties because there's a global demand for these protective gear and equipment. We are doing worldwide search. We are calling up even individual suppliers and industrialists who have plants all over the world to see whether they could help to give Hong Kong a needed supply. And I can assure you that money is not an issue. We are not asking for competitive tendering. Whoever has a supply, as long as it fulfills the specifications according to the Department of Health, and they can be sent to Hong Kong, there will be direct purchases by the Government Logistics Department. But the difficulties are very real. So while on the one hand, I accept and admit the need to ensure a stable supply, that is not something that I could promise without conditions because they are not locally produced. They have to come from overseas. Now, finally, is this demand in their list of demands is about a complete closure of the borders I have just explained to John. So it's the same answer. As far as a ban on travelers from mainland, you have been given some of the figures. In terms of numbers, and by the way, when it comes to infection control, when it comes to a virus, there is no boundary. So you cannot differentiate that people of a certain race, of a certain nationality, of a certain residential status, or holding a certain travel document are more prone to infection than other people. So we have to treat them equally. As long as these people cross the border from an infected area, say from mainland, they have the same risk. So we treat them similarly. And in terms of numbers of people, the Hong Kong people returning to Hong Kong or arriving in our control points, the number is much bigger than just talking about mainlanders or other travelers like American, Japanese, or French. So the question is, by consolidating the control points, making it very inconvenient for people to cross the border, we hope and we have demonstrated that it will bring down the numbers. But I do not rule out further measures as the situation evolves. Frank.
Thank you, Xi. Well, as we have explained to the Consulate General Assembly yesterday, because, as a member of the global community, flight connection between cities is a very important link, for people to travel from one country to another. And therefore, at the Hong Kong International Airport, we have done everything we can. For example, for every passenger arriving at the Hong Kong International Airport, they would have to go through the health declaration process. They would have to go through the thermal screening to see whether they are fit to be admitted into Hong Kong. And for passengers going overseas, they would have passed through the thermal exit screening as well, including those who take transit at the Hong Kong International Airport, whether they are coming from overseas to the mainland or from the mainland to overseas countries. So as one of the busiest airports across the globe, we have to discharge our responsibility as a dependable and trustworthy international airport. So we have put in places all kinds of scanning equipment, including handheld equipment, so that every passenger departing Hong Kong would have been scanned individually, and making sure that everyone is safe and sound to travel. And as you would have noticed, there was a ban from Vietnam to suspend, flights between Vietnam and Hong Kong. But after our explanation to them, informing them the mechanism and the procedures and the robustness of our screening processes, they finally allow flights to resume. And we are also talking with the Italian government with respect to the passenger flight ban. And I talked to the Consul General yesterday, and he promised to write back to the Italian government, explaining to them the kind of measures we have adopted in Hong Kong. And hopefully, well, I hope they will give us the kind of green light to go ahead in the near future. So I hope I have explained enough why we have to maintain international transport for Hong Kong people, for overseas visitors, and for anyone who travel in and out of Hong Kong and transiting Hong Kong. Thank you.
既然陳局長提到我哋昨天同駐港嘅總領事嘅會面呢，我就多講幾句嚇。因為自從世界衛生組織作咗個聲明之後啦，就我哋留意到有啲外國嘅政府喺航班或者係入境嘅時候咧，係出咗一啲措施嚇。 我哋每一個措施，我哋都要檢視對於香港嘅居民嘅影響嚇。咁所以為咗防止有更加多嘅外國政府因為對於香港喺抗疫工作嗰方面唔夠理解，而係採取咗一啲影響香港居民在外嘅情況咧，我哋昨天咧就星期日就安排咗同總領事見面啊，咁佢哋都好踴躍出席嚇，都知道嘅情況。我亦都同樣喺昨天咧就向全港駐港嘅所有嘅總領事、名譽領事咧都發咗一封信嚇。咁啊稍後我哋都好樂意咧將呢個信咧俾大家參考嘅，就係同佢交代由疫情開始之前咧到而家我哋做咗嘅工作。因為我哋非常之關心香港嘅居民，如果佢喺外地，因為呢啲外國政府嘅措施，又或者因為我哋自己採取閉關嘅措施，佢不能夠翻嚟滯留咗外地咧，將會製造大量嘅嘅問題。所以從呢個角度出發咧，我哋係每一個呢啲嘅地方出現咗問題咧，我哋都係非常之關心，亦都係即時介入。又等於最新我聽到咧喺菲律賓政府採取嘅措施咧，可能影響咗喺香港好大量嘅海外嘅傭工，嚟自菲律賓嘅海外傭工。咁所以我都要求勞工處同埋入境處咧喺呢度有啲咩方法可以去做。如果佢約滿咗，但係又而家翻唔到去，咁咪兩邊都唔到岸咁。咁所以我哋都會諗一啲咧係用人性化嘅角度咧嚟幫佢去解決而家目前因為國際旅遊出現咗一啲嘅阻滯而面對嘅問題。另一個比較人性化嘅措施，我哋將會推出咧，就係喺每日跨境嚟嘅簽注有一類叫做探親嘅簽注。咁我哋知道裏邊有唔少咧係因為嚟照顧小朋友，或者佢帶咗個小朋友翻內地係翻嚟，而呢一位嘅一般係媽媽啦嚇，佢本身係冇香港嘅居留權嘅嚇，但個小朋友有。咁所以如果我哋完全唔容許呢啲攞住雙程證要嚟香港照顧幼童嘅媽媽入境因為全面封咗關咁就出現好大嘅問題。咁所以我哋亦都唔想佢時常要翻去原居地再去申請延續呢個雙程證。咁所以入境處處長咧會係體恤酌情咁，可能就係俾佢延長佢喺香港嘅逗留，減少佢需要不斷咁跨境去攞呢個雙程證咧嚟香港照顧呢啲兒童。呢啲例子係好多嘅，各位傳媒朋友、各位市民要明白，因為我哋同內地真係好緊密，兩地嘅人民嘅交往係好多元嘅嚇，咁所以一刀切去做一啲嘢，帶嚟嘅影響係大。我哋而家嘅做法係一方面我哋整合呢啲口岸，縮減人流，去控制個關口，但係亦都要就住每一個佢必須要跨境嘅類別，睇下有冇其他嘅方法可以喺呢一段咁疫情嚴峻嘅時候咧，減少佢需要跨境嗰個嘅嗰個需要嚇。
最後兩位，紅色衫嘅。
林太，你有香港電台嘅提問。首先想問下咧，即係點解到今時今日咧都唔限制所有嘅內地旅客入境咧？咁有市民問咧，即係你作為特首咧，係咪點都要同香港市民作對咧？呢個係第一個問題。第二個問題就係即係根據入境處琴日嘅數字咧，琴日啦經深圳灣、港珠澳大橋同埋機場在內嘅內地旅客入境人次咧，係佔整體內地旅客入境人次嘅60%。咁而其中喺陸路方面最多內地旅客入境嘅地方就係深圳灣，有成2200幾人次嘅。點解你今日都仲係要留低呢個缺口呢？第三個問題就係話，而家已經係出現咗一啲嘅本地感染嘅個案啦，咁而家先至進一步係封羅湖同埋封落馬洲，係咪已經係錯失咗呢個防疫嘅黃金機會呢？最後一個問題就係關於口罩嘅。其實你知唔知好多公公婆婆咧凌晨4、5點咧就要起身去排隊買口罩，而且未必買到，買唔到嘅時候仲要浪費佢哋身上邊戴住一個口罩。既然懲教署方面係可以生產口罩嘅，咁而以往都試過係將啲口罩咧，即係政府生產口罩咧，係派俾一啲非政府嘅組織係即係流咗出去嘅。咁既然係咁嘅時候，會唔會考慮都可能係譬如喺各區嘅民政處啊，一啲社區中心啊，係優先派發俾一啲嘅長者，等佢哋唔使喺個寒風之下去排隊買口罩咧？唔該晒。
第一個問題呢，作為特區政府，無論係我本人或者係我嘅團隊呢，我哋都係照顧香港市民嘅需要嚇，亦都係照顧香港嘅整體嘅公眾利益嚇。我對於你用嗰兩個字呢，我係好有保留嘅嚇。我哋一定唔會係同市民作對嚇，但係整體嘅利益係要照顧啊。剛才我都喺兩個英文嘅問題裏邊解釋咗點解我哋要用呢一種嘅策略，透過嚴控關口、壓縮人流，然後加強喺呢啲剩餘運作嘅關口咧做呢個嘅防控嘅工作。因為就係好多香港市民係應該或者可能咧係有呢啲需要跨境。我頭先俾你嘅數字嗰幾萬、嗰10萬離境同埋入境嘅係香港市民嚟嘅啊。咁所以係咪呢10萬離境入境嘅香港市民，佢哋嘅利益、佢哋嘅需要，我哋可以置之不理咧？利益唔係錢嘅利益嚇。我諗大家守翻規矩，我哋就繼續傾啦嚇。
俾行政長官答埋先好冇？
我已經講過好多次啦，喺防疫嘅工作咧係無分國籍、無分種族、無分佢係持有咩嘅旅行證件，係需要用呢個一視同仁嘅方法咧嚟到處理，尤其是。
唔該，唔該，唔該。請各位記者朋友唔好打斷行政長官發言，好嗎？唔需要，行政長官會答嘅，行政長官會答嘅。唔該，唔該。唔好意思，唔該。請你靜一靜啊嘛。唔該。
關於呢個入境嘅問題咧，我已經多次喺度講咗啦嚇。但係我想大家明白，我哋係需要照顧我哋嘅香港人每日咁跨境嚇，亦都要喺呢度強烈咁勸喻咧，係冇必要，最好唔好去跨境，因為佢哋咁樣出境入境咧，係影響到我哋嘅防疫工作。但係對於旅客，無論係內地嘅旅客、外地嘅旅客，經呢啲關口入境，我哋都係一視同仁咁喺度嚴格控制緊嚇。至於你話深圳灣口岸係咪最多人用嘅口岸？我記憶中就唔係嚇，不過數字上嗰陣啊，入境處處長可以講。但選擇邊個口岸呢？頭先講咗啦，就係令到跨境嘅旅客係不方便啊！嗱，呢樣嘢真係好少做。我哋通常做嘢都係令到市民方便，但因為今次呢係需要壓縮人流，所以選擇嘅口岸呢係不方便嚇。咁你可以想象啦，羅湖同埋落馬洲支線，因為可以搭火車去到，咁係比較方便嘅。而深圳灣口岸呢，就相對係唔係好方便。但係當你閂咗咁多個口岸，到時嗰啲人係點樣走呢？其實而家評估唔到喎。如果佢真係要過去，咁佢咪去深圳灣口岸咯嚇。如果佢覺得不方便，我就唔去啦。我等第日過咗疫情先去做我本來要做嘅嘢呢。咁呢個就係我哋想見到嗰個嘅效果啦。另外咧，就係從公共衛生嘅角度，喺鐵路或者喺火車卡裏邊係會引起起碼即係如果大家唔係戴足晒口罩啦，可能大家擔心喺嗰個傳播方面。咁所以我哋都係選擇咧係即係暫停咗2條都係跨境嘅，即係鐵路可以直達呢啲口岸區嘅。就喺防疫嗰個方面揾專家講啦，或者阿陳處長或者陳教授講第3條題目啦嚇。第
唔該，
我等佢哋答咯嚇。我有咁多同事喺度，佢哋比我更加有知識、有經驗去答呢啲問題，我可以轉介俾佢哋答㗎嘛。
雖然唔好意思，呢位記者俾翻台上嘅官員答啦嘛。處長，
或者我俾少少數字先啦嚇。我哋頭先都講咧，我哋係講緊佢個來源地方係咪？咁咧，如果你睇喺深圳灣經深圳灣而嚟香港咧，喺過去2日咧，就係我哋講緊咧係每日咧大約係有1萬多人，呢個係講緊深圳灣。喺羅湖咧，呢2日嚟講咧，有一日係2萬幾，一日係1萬幾。 咁所以咧唔可以攞一日嘅數字睇。另外一樣嘢咧就係，如果你講成個1月嘅平均數咧，羅湖咧平均咧，即係我哋總計喺1月嚟講咧，係講緊旅客嘅總數咧係有4萬。落馬洲之前係3萬6，而深圳灣咧係3萬4。所以始終最大使用量咧，如果平均嘅數字啊，都係羅湖同落馬洲之前，深圳灣絕對唔係一個最大嘅。咁但係某一日嗰個數字會有變化，呢個係在所難免嘅。咁所以我哋睇整體嗰個人流嘅數字，如果喺內地翻嚟嘅咧，我哋做咗咁多整合措施咧，就等於我哋做第一階段嘅整合措施咧，整體嘅數字咧都已經係有60%嘅下跌㗎嘛。剛才都講，咁今次嘅整合咧，我哋都覺得咧，如果係同上一次嘅整合個情況係類似而重複嘅話咧，都會有相應嘅數字係下跌㗎。
最後一條，呢位
係林太你好啊，有線電視嘅。想問翻呢，其實即係疫情發展去到今日啦，咁其實都仲係有2個口岸其實係冇封到啦。咁其實頭先都提過就話有一啲嘅個案，即係譬如話有一啲即係唔係香港人嘅媽媽，即係其實入境處係可以酌情處理。咁點解都仲係唔可以即係做到即係一啲即係社會上普遍要求就係話即係限制一啲曾經去過內地嘅非香港人入境呢？咁同埋即係就係見到頭先都提過就係話即係有一啲嘅醫護人員罷工，就話今日即係有一啲即係進一步嘅即係防疫措施就同佢哋今日罷工係無關嘅。咁其實即係尋日即係嗰個工會都邀請過你去即係不如大家坐低傾一傾啦。咁但係你都拒絕去出席。咁其實係咪無論佢哋講乜嘢做啲乜嘢，你都係唔會聽唔會理？即係其實政府想做啲乜嘢，你就會繼續自己想做咩就去做呢？另外都想問翻阿高醫生嘅，其實就係即係就住今日有一啲嘅醫護人員罷工啦。咁之前都話有一啲嘅私家醫生咁，其實就願意去公立醫院幫手啦。咁其實佢去到而家啦，咁其實就分配好佢哋會去啲咩科未呢？咁佢實際可以幫到啲乜嘢呢？咁啊同埋其實都有一啲嘅消息就係話，其實有一啲嘅即係去到聽日嘅時候，有一啲嘅手術室嘅護士啊，或者係一啲即係相對比較緊急嘅醫護人員，佢哋都會係即係罷工啦。咁呢一啲嘅即係嚟幫手嘅私家醫生，佢會唔會係即係都幫手做呢啲嘅手術？咁如果去到一啲高風險嘅時候，萬一即係出咗啲咩事，咁其實佢哋嘅性質，佢哋唔係一個醫管局嘅員工嘅時候，咁出咗事嘅時候，其實係邊個去負責呢？同埋截至今日，其實到底有幾多病人係即係受到醫護人員罷工而有影響？有冇一個即係具體確實嘅數俾到我哋？唔該。
我淨係回答關於開會個問題嚇。一直以嚟咧，高醫生都有通報咧，佢係約咗呢個工會咧喺昨天會面嘅，由醫院管理局主席同埋係行政總裁去同自己嘅員工嘅會面咧，我認為係一個適當嘅做法嚇。高醫生，請阿高醫生。
請記者靜一靜好嗎？請記者靜一靜。高醫生，
係咁，我講翻頭先記者朋友問到關於今日個服務影響嘅情況啦，或者我首先講咗私家醫生嗰方面先嚇。咁我哋都多謝有啲私家嘅無論醫生護理嘅同事咧嚇，都係表達願意咧協助我哋喺呢個艱難嘅時候嘅。咁我哋而家咧都同佢哋做緊一啲配對嘅工作嚇，因為大家知道唔同嘅同事佢哋嘅專業經驗可能唔同嚇，咁都希望咧安排一個適當嘅崗位嚇。咁呢個咧都係一個進行中。咁而事實上咧，以往咧都係有一啲同事，無論可能係透過part time locum 咁翻嚟醫管局工作。咁個角色咧都係醫管局嘅僱員嚟嘅，即係可能係一啲唔同嘅一啲僱傭關係啦。所以咧佢哋都係受到我哋嘅保障嚇，其他方面。咁當然啦，佢哋如果要做臨床工作咧，都必須要進行適當嘅感染控制方面嘅培訓各方面嘅。另外都講一講個服務方面啦嚇。咁我哋到今日大約中午到啦，我都而家手頭上面有最新嘅數字，知道大約有2000多位同事啦參與今次嘅工業行動或者叫罷工嘅行動，對我哋服務影響都大嘅。正如昨日我提過，我哋暫時睇到影響比較大嘅就係一啲唔同嘅專科嘅服務，譬如喺一啲門診服務啦，同埋一啲非緊急手術咧，我哋而家都大致上都削減咗接近50%。 特別喺一啲個別嘅專科咧情況比較嚴重啲，譬如喺手術室嘅護士同事嘅方面咧，嗰個參與呢個行動嘅同事比較多，令到我哋咧維持一啲相對上都比較重要嘅手術都係有困難嘅。譬如比方一啲個別嘅癌症嘅手術啊，或者甚至乎心胸外科嘅手術咧我哋都係要削減一啲數字先能夠咧維持得到。另外個情況咧就係喺一啲個別嘅專科咧，我哋都非常之擔心。譬如舉例咧，就係好似喺我哋新生嬰兒嘅深切治療科咁樣啦，或者兒科啊，甚至乎一啲心導管嘅實驗室咧個人手咧喺個別嘅部門咧都出現嚴重嘅缺勤。咁呢方面咧係我哋覺得係非常之擔心同埋咧都係好覺得咧係好重要。因為我哋都見到咧，係可能有機會令到一啲病人咧係面對一啲不必要嘅風險。我哋面對呢個情況咧，當然都係要好靠而家繼續有返工嘅同事啦我哋睇下佢哋嘅調配各方面咁我哋都非常之多謝呢啲同事幫手，亦都有啲同事咧原本休假都取消咗佢哋假期翻嚟幫手。但係我想強調咧呢個情況係嚴重嘅，因此咧我都再次強烈咁樣要求參與罷工或者打算罷工嘅同事咧放棄佢哋呢一個罷工嘅諗法，因為雖然大家對防疫嘅程度睇法未必一樣，但我相信個理念係一致嘅但係希望各位同事都唔好用呢個罷工嘅手法去表達佢哋嘅意見，因為的而且確我哋見到咧今日都對服務嘅影響非常之大。另外譬如我哋都見到有一啲我哋負責放射科嘅同事啦放射診斷嘅同事咧都比較多數目咧係參與今次嘅工業行動，令到唔單止我哋啲非緊急嘅服務啦甚至乎我哋喺個別醫院咧維持一啲對緊急服務嘅支援都受到影響大家都可以想像，譬如喺抗疫工作裏邊咧，我哋要幫病人去照X 光要照電腦掃描呢啲都令到咧喺我哋嗰個支援上出現一定嘅困難。我哋都見到有部分個別嘅隔離病房咧嘅同事都缺勤情況比較嚴重呢個都係我哋好擔心嘅當然我哋都盡量去跟其他同事幫手調配啦，但係大家都明白臨時調配同事入去呢一個隔離嘅設施係一個有風險嘅動作嚟嘅咁所以咧我都係再尋味多一次咧希望同事咧唔好以罷工嘅一個方法去表達呢啲意見因為的而且確咧係對病人對同事係有危險嘅因為而家我哋嘅情況係非常之困難啦。咁希望咧，無論係我哋嘅同事啦成個社會都要諒解，都支持我哋而家嘅同事嘅工作。同埋我哋都更加擔心咧，如果呢個情況係唔係淨係今日係維持落去嘅時候咧，我哋未必可以繼續維持個服務咁呢個咧我都希望大家係注意亦都希望各位市民諒解咁我哋當然亦都做緊好多方法去盡量減少呢一個影響嘅，例如譬如喺門診方面，我哋都盡量將一啲唔緊急嘅去褪個時間啦改變個流程啦。藥物嗰方面可能就係如果病人穩定嘅時候，盡量安排佢哋替補一啲藥物啦另外再安排一啲時間再覆診，咁好多方面工作都會做嘅。頭先提到當然我哋都好感謝一啲私家嘅同事幫手啦但係我都想強調，我諗大家頭先嘅問題都問緊呢一點㗎啦，就係都唔可能話突然之間有啲臨時嚟私家嘅同事咧，即刻可以代替咗我哋現有同事嘅工作因為大家都明白熟悉嘅工作環境相關嘅專業技術嘅配對咧都係唔容易嘅咁所以呢啲方面咧我哋覺得維持服務係最重要，同埋而家抗疫咧，頭先大家都聽到係呢段時間係一個好緊張嘅時間係非常之關鍵嘅時間，所以我哋都希望所有嘅同事啦都同心協力一齊去做好呢一次抗疫嘅工作。
今日記者會到呢度，多謝大家。